Good evening and welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our regular council meeting of Wednesday, June the 28th. I want to advise all of you that this meeting is being audio, video recorded, and live streamed on the Town of Innisfil's YouTube channel and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. So thank you, all of you who came out this evening. Thank you to staff, members of council. We have a jam-packed agenda this evening that we're going to get through, hopefully as efficiently as possible. So we will start by asking Councillor Drodge to provide our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Town of Innisfil acknowledges that the Town of Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that the land is traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for their generations of stewardship. This place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of the Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you very much, Councillor Drodge. We'll now go to open forum, and I've got 2 people who've signed up on the orange sheet, but 3 people on the screen. So we'll start with Megan Varga on item B.2, which is the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Welcome, Ms. Varga, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm here tonight to discuss the intersection of Big Bay Point Road and the 20th Side Road. I'd like to apologize to Councillor Richardson. I did reach out to all of you that were not part of the TSAC to discuss this matter, and I was not able to coordinate a time to sit up with you, and I do apologize for that. I am disappointed, though, that only Councillor Richardson and Councillor Saunders responded to my request. So I approached the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee with a petition to make improvements to the intersection to hopefully alleviate all the near misses and potential accidents that are not part of the collected statistical traffic data. The minutes of that meeting are included in tonight's agenda under B2. To date, 633 people have signed the petition, 143 from Innisfil, 203 from Barrie, 166 from within an hour, 13 from within 2 hours, and 183 hours or further. Correspondence I received from the town indicates that the intersection is slated for signalization in 2031. With all due respect to staff, being a proud CUPE member myself, it is council's responsibility to listen to staff recommendations, but it is also your obligation to listen to residents and represent their best interests. You have the right to direct staff to move timelines. We watched a group of residents form a coalition to fast-track the Harvey Road crossing in Barrie. After an extensive campaign, City Council directed staff to move up the timelines, and the road was built and opened years before the planned date. We are asking Council here to do the same. Fast-track the signalization of this intersection. I am hoping we won't need to follow the Harvey Road Crossing Coalition's footsteps, avoiding a website, an extensive social media campaign, and a peaceful protest at Town Hall. After consulting with a couple of municipalities, the estimated cost for temporary signals is $125,000, permanent ones $250,000, and it'll cost roughly $5,000 a year to operate them. Although this intersection may not be in the budget, there are emergency and discretionary funds that can be drawn from to get this done. The annexation agreement clearly defines Innisfil being responsible for this intersection's improvements, but we do have support from the Ward 10 Barrie councillor, so we could at least ask Barrie if they'd be willing to front some of these costs. I've almost been hit many times, almost daily, and I drive a large purple SUV, so I'm very visible. But most people think it's a 4-way stop intersection like every other one on the 20th from the 9th line to Mapleview. The last accident there, the driver who was at fault was heard saying, "I thought it was a 4-way. There are constant posts in the Big Bay Point Community Facebook group about the near misses. There was just one the other day. If you're north of Big Bay Point, the landmass, the only path to get home or visit Friday Harbor without taking a detour to avoid that intersection, going more than 10 minutes out of your way, so it just doesn't make sense. There's a new venture development and consistent development at Friday Harbor, increasing traffic at this intersection, and it's only a matter of time before someone has a life-altering accident or dies. Having someone pull out when you are traveling 80 kilometers an hour is a recipe for disaster. I truly appreciate your time tonight, and I look forward to working with you all to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Varga. Next on the list is Michael Cece here, item 10.1. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Sorry. Thank you, Your Worship, and hello, members of council. Just speaking to item 10.1. I represent the ownership group of BNP Inc., who are the longtime owners and operators of the National Pines Golf Course in Innisfil since 1992. A few months ago, we received word from the City of Barrie that they were looking to acquire, and if that sort of the purchase was not agreed to, they would be expropriating land in the town of Innisfil along the golf course property for the Huronia Road widening project. That sort of has proceeded from an offer to currently a Section 30 offer, and if that offer is not accepted, the City of Barrie will be proceeding to expropriate land from Innisfil, which jurisdictionally is still a bit confusing, but I'm happy to sort of address if there's further concerns that council has or answers questions if you wish to avail yourself of bylaw 43.7 to ask any further questions. But I thank you, Councillor, for bringing forward the motion.
Thank you very much. And item 3 on our open forum this evening is Rob Nichols, who's going to talk about item C5, community benefit allocation. Welcome, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Worship, Deputy Mayor, members of council and staff. Great to be back in the room. As ward councillor for 8 years, I wanted to share some important points to consider with item C5 and the proposed Cookstown sewer allocation for community benefit. Staff provided an overview of the facts in the report, but not necessarily all the history here. Royal Oak Estate had allocation over 10 years ago for these remaining lots, but even with the extensions, never acted to utilize them for any benefit of the community. Afterwards, they did try to get more allocation to expand on 53 Victoria Street instead of using what they had. Last year, they dropped off trailers without even applying for permits or starting the application process. Staff had no idea that they were there until the neighbors alerted us. Like Sandy Cove, this is a unique committee on one property. Residents in land lease communities have limited power or control, and the same is true with the town. Our infrastructure ends at the property line, and it is the private property owner who provides the services to the land lessees. And they have had many complaints for bylaw and property standards problems. Over the years, I've dealt with flooding and drainage issues, street lighting issues, roadway and salt clearing problems, even fire suppression concerns. And just 9 months ago, a water main failed, and those homeowners lost the necessity of life, tap water, over the entire Thanksgiving weekend. With our limited control over this service, myself, the mayor, engaged with senior management, in-services, operations, fire services, and staff to supply bottled water, 2 tanker trucks, and then expedite the locates, as the owner said they couldn't get anyone until Tuesday. Even with their help, some of these residents were still without water for over a week. I can't imagine how long it would have been had we not pushed this forward. So, if these 5 units are that important, they should have started the application process properly and seen what allocation was available in September for this property and others. Because this seems to be circumventing or manipulating the process for personal benefit and not the community. But if you do consider this a community benefit, is this DC recoverable or now exempt under Bill 23 and the Attainable Housing Muse? Numerous developments are on the books, and thousands of units are all on hold awaiting sewer allocation. And the last estimate I saw was about $40 million to add about 500 units, $80,000 per unit. That's bad math. There's very limited sewer allocation for Cookstown, and your control of these 5 of 7 total units should be for the benefit of the entire community and not just one property. I understand there's at least one current commercial applicant that is not circumventing the rules, and I don't think it's appropriate to tell any other legitimate applications to wait until September so you can leapfrog these 5 residential units, especially when we do have other attainable and rental units with allocation in Cookstown who are anticipated to secure their permits by September as well. I hope this background information will help you make a good decision, and I hope you enjoy your break in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. And that ends open forum. Thank you all for being succinct. So we will now go to the approval of the agenda. The agenda as printed, we did have a supplemental agenda put on, and then there's 2 items that were on here as well that we'll be adding for this evening. So mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Waters and Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of interest, pecuniary or conflict on tonight's agenda? Councillor Drodge?
Through your worship, I have a conflict of interest on C7. He's a close personal friend.
Thank you. If you haven't already, if you will see the clerk's office, we actually have to do our conflict of interest declarations in writing now. Thank you. Presentations and petitions, we have none. Delegations, we do have a delegation this evening by Ms. Brand. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Brand. Oh, I've done something wrong. Oh, we do have a delegation. Or I've got them out of order. I'm sorry, Ms. Brand. Just give us a few minutes. Thanks for your patience. We have David Riley and Paul Lowe's of SGL Planning and Design Incorporated, Justine Giacola of Dillon Consulting and Town Planning staff that will give us an update on the community planning permit study and some project updates. Thank you. My apologies for skipping over you.
That's okay, Your Worship, and hello, Your Worship and members of council. I'm happy to be here tonight to speak about one of the town's ongoing projects, which I and the consulting team and planning staff are quite excited about, and giving you a little bit of an update on where we're at tonight. So we're here to talk about the community planning permit system. And some of you are very familiar with it, and some of you may not be as familiar with it. So I'll be providing an overview and briefly describing what our directions report says, and hopefully getting endorsement to move on with the next phase of the study. So I'm one member of a larger team of individuals. Madam Mayor introduced Paul Lowe's and Justine Giancola, who are here, or who are not here this evening. They're at their own events, kind of all over the country. And of course, we're joined here by staff. We've got Brandon, and I don't believe Adriana or Kishmita are here, but of course, Stephen is there, and Andrea over there. And so I'll be just providing an overview on behalf of everyone here, and hopefully moving the slide forward. But I'll be starting really just by providing an overview of what is a community planning permit system. I don't know where I should be pointing this. Oh, there we go. Perfect. There we go. So a community planning permit system is a land use planning tool. It's available to all municipalities in Ontario, and it's done so through the Ontario Planning Act. Essentially, it very simply replaces a municipality's zoning bylaw, but also other processes, and I'll speak to that. And some of you may be familiar with the term development permit system. That is now what's being referred to as the community planning permit system. So what it is a tool to streamline development approvals by combining zoning, site plan, and the minor variance process all into one process, which is the community planning permit process. So how does it differ from a zoning bylaw, for example? And there's a few things, and we list here approvals, urban design, public consultation, appeal rights, and approval timelines, and I'll speak to all of those. So with respect to approvals, whereas now a zoning bylaw amendment is approved by council, a minor variance application is approved by the Committee of Adjustment, and site plan approval is approved by staff, all of those processes are tied into one process, but a community planning permit system has the ability to delegate approvals. So you can have staff approve more of the more minor applications, and you can have council approve some of the larger applications, just to simplify it a little bit. With respect to urban design, typically right now, urban design is something that's issued at the site plan approval stage. In a community planning permit system, you can pull forward the urban design, actually bring them and make them more of a part of the bylaw itself, really to achieve those design objectives that are, of course, stemming from the vision, the town's vision in the official plan. Public consultation. So right now, there's required public consultation as part of a minor variance process, as part of a zoning bylaw amendment process, not for site plan. In a community planning permit system, you actually don't need any, there's no legislated requirement for public consultation. However, in practice, many municipalities are going above and beyond that and instituting, based on what class of permit you're achieving, a public process. Appeal rights are also different. Been some changes to this recently, and right now, zoning bylaw amendments are appealable by third parties. In a community planning permit system, you can't, any permit application cannot be appealed by a third party. It can only be appealed by the applicant. And approval timelines. It's legislated that community planning permits must be approved within 45 days of an application being deemed complete, whereas if you compare that to the traditional process that we have now, a zoning bylaw amendment on average takes 3 months. Then you move into site plan, which could take another 3 months. And these are pretty, I would say, optimistic timelines. It can take much longer. So big difference from 45 days. So this is just a real simple graphic that I encourage you all to refer to again and again. It's really showing the traditional process versus a community planning permit process. And the big box at the top of the screen, all of those items are combined into one process that's dealt with within 45 days. I just talked a little bit about notification requirements. The town currently has a community planning permit system called Our Shore along the shoreline. In that system right now, there's no notification requirement for Class 2, which is a staff approval, or Class 3, which is just, it complies with the bylaw, whereas there is a notification that goes out for council approval items. But of course, all applications are posted on the town's website. And as I mentioned, there's an opportunity through the town-wide study to consider what should be those notification requirements, what works for Innisfil, and it's very flexible in that regard. So the key benefits, just to summarize, is that there's a streamlined approval process with shorter approval timelines, which in turn can help get housing to market quicker, which I'm sure is a topic that you've all been discussing more recently. It can really help support those local priorities and provides flexibility to define how land can be used based on conditional approvals. So you can actually use conditional approvals to make sure that some of these community goals and objectives are met. And it creates certainty and transparency for the community landowners and developers because everything is really set out in the bylaw in terms of process. So how has it been used to date? Innisfil, of course, already has the community planning permit, as I mentioned, which is the Our Shore bylaw. And where that fits in the Ontario planning framework is that you've got all the provincial legislation to the provincial plans, to the county's plan, to the town's official plan. And then you've got, right now, the town zoning bylaw and the Our Shore community planning permit bylaw, which applies to the shoreline. So where you have a community planning permit bylaw, there is no zoning bylaw. And so similarly, if we are moving to a community planning permit bylaw townwide, there will not be a zoning bylaw. But it addresses all of those requirements that a zoning bylaw address in terms of setbacks and lot coverage and all of those things. So the Our Shore bylaw came into effect at the beginning of 2019. It's only the shoreline. Since then, there's been almost 250 applications. For the council's benefit and the public's benefit, about half of these applications were actually approved within 45 days. Of all applications received, 5% of them went to council, whereas 74% were staff variation, so addressed by staff, and 19 were standard, which means they really met all of the bylaw requirements. But really the goals of Our Shore were really to look at a standard development approval process for the shoreline, really to protect the shoreline and address matters such as site alteration and vegetation removal, which are tools that you can bring into a community planning permit system. And so why is the town looking now citywide or townwide for a community planning permit bylaw? there's a need, of course, to periodically update the zoning bylaw. And so now that we're doing that, it was decided a couple years ago that the path forward would be to explore, should we do a community planning permit bylaw on a town-wide basis? It would allow the town to manage site alteration and tree removal, as I mentioned, natural feature protection, while also regulating land use as a current zoning bylaw does, and combining a streamlined development approval process all into one. And what we've learned from the Our Shore bylaw, and that we want to carry forward and improve the Our Shore bylaw through a town-wide bylaw, is that we're going to want requirements for pre-consultation with the town ahead of all applications, really to set out, okay, these are the expectations, this is what needs to be provided before we accept the application and move forward to consider it. There were comments that we need to improve flexibility for Class 3 variations to reflect legal non-conforming uses. It's an opportunity to update the definitions and making sure that we're clear and concise and reduce ambiguity. We really want to facilitate an interactive online platform, and it's an opportunity really to have a really good system online where people can go online and understand exactly what would be permitted on their property, and also track development applications at the same time, ultimately. It's an opportunity to really create a new look document that is really user-friendly and has an educational component so that people understand what this is really. I'll skip through this slide just because I know my time is limited, but this is really just a scenario of someone going through a traditional process versus a CPPS. The main headline of this slide is really that it is achieved in a much shorter time frame of 45 days. And so what are we recommending going forward? So we have done a lot of background work, a lot of background studies that are one of the appendices to the staff report, as well as a directions report of what we've learned. And what we're recommending is that the city, or that the town does proceed with a town-wide community planning permit bylaw. But we think that it should be phased by priority areas. So you already have two bylaws. You have the zoning bylaw and you have the Our Shore bylaw. Really, it would be the Our Shore bylaw now plus our phased priority areas in a growing community planning permit bylaw and a shrinking zoning bylaw as new areas come on board. We would be developing all the bylaw as a whole now and really focusing on priority areas, which are really, you'll hear me go through them shortly, but your areas where you're growing. Which is where I think we're going to see many of the benefits that I mentioned come about. So phase 1A is really updating the Our Shore bylaw based on the excellent feedback that we've received, and we've spoken to members of the public, folks that live and have gone through the process of applying for a community planning permit, as well as the development community and town staff of actually going through the implementation of the bylaw, and many recommendations for making the process a little bit smoother and improving the bylaw itself. So that's the first step. And then tied alongside with that would be bringing forward the community planning permit bylaw for all of Alcona. This is your primary settlement area, and we think that there's a really good opportunity to bring forward the community planning permit system for Alcona and really focus on achieving those community goals in Innisfil. The next priority would be the urban settlement areas of Sandy Cove and Lefroy-Belliourt, followed by the village and the hamlet settlement areas, so Cookstown, Stroud, Churchill, Fennels Corners, and Guilford. And then any future settlement area expansions that may be coming about, we'd want to focus on those. And then the rest of the town, which would be the agricultural area, the rural area, the specialty crop area, and of course, Innisfil Heights. Innisfil Heights, as mentioned in the staff report, really if servicing, for example, a servicing solution were to become available and these lands are ready to go now, then I would say it would be appropriate to move that up to a higher priority. It's really just based on where growth is occurring that these have been set out. So what are the next steps? We're at the beginning stages. It has started in 2002, but we're a lot of background work to do, and now we're really starting a more public phase of it. We're actually getting into developing the bylaw and what we call the placemaking guidelines, the sustainable placemaking and sustainable design guidelines. That will be happening starting this summer through the fall, and then we move into the final phase into 2024, which would be completing the bylaw. And throughout all of this, there's going to be many more touch points with the council, but particularly the public and our committees that we are involving throughout the process. There's lots of information online. All of the reports I mentioned are available. There's an online survey, and any questions I'm happy to answer today. The public and anyone who wants to follow up can go through Kishmita, and Kishmita or any staff could put you in touch with the consulting team, and I'm sure staff was happy to discuss as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riley. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a few things, I'm reading this, and I'm not exactly sure how to process if it's a positive or not. When we're talking about public meetings and restricting them, I don't like the idea of not allowing people to express their voices and opinions in regards to the development of the town as a whole, and the appeal rights by third parties. My question in regards to that is, if something is going to be built near me that affects me directly, why would I not have a say in the matter of expressing myself? Like, it seems like we're going forward and streamlining the process. I understand that, I get it. But the idea is at the same time as we're doing it at the cost of the voices of the residents, and how do we reassure them that this is a good thing?
That's a very good point, Mr. Fowler, through you, Madam Mayor. The great thing about a CPPS is its flexibility. And what we've seen in many of the other communities that have recently implemented a community planning permit system, but also those that have had them for quite a long time, they have actually gone beyond the legislative requirement and do have a public process as part of their applications. And that's something that we as planners would be recommending to the town to go forward. So baking that in, so making sure that when there is an application, there is an opportunity for the public to participate. And the bylaw can be crafted such that you set up different classes of permits. So if you meet all of the bylaw requirements, then it's essentially just a check to make sure site alteration okay, is vegetation removal okay, are we achieving these objectives? That's a staff approval. There's no, in today's world, that wouldn't even happen. It would just go straight to building permit. So there would be no public process. So that, I think, would be appropriate to not have a public meeting for those items that do meet all of the check marks. But for those that do, the bylaw can actually establish thresholds. So if you are only varying by 10% or less, or 20% or less, and you can be very specific in the bylaw, then that can be staff approval, and we don't need to have necessarily a public forum where there's expression. However, the applications we're recommending should be posted online all the time, as the town is currently doing. But for those larger variations, what the town of Huntsville did, for example, is that they've brought in a public meeting component that goes into before the decision is made, so that the decision makers can hear what the public has to say about these decisions. And so that is something that we like as planners. The public participation is a really important part of planning and the growth of our community. So we want to see that continue.
Follow up, Deputy Mayor?
One additional question regarding flexibility. With the town being so diverse in its ecology, will there be a standard that can be that fits all builds? Is there something we can apply to that? Because, I mean, if you take a look, we got 242 square kilometers for Innisfil. And you go to Big Bay Point, it's far different than Lefroy than it is from Cookstown.
Yes.
So when we talk about a planning permit system, what is the flexibility regarding the region that it's in? Like, how does that, like, because like if you take a look, say, for example, with flooding in Lefroy versus Cookstown where you have a highway going through it, like those are two fairly separate issues.
Yep.
Is there something that we can get that would, instead of just making one blanket permit system, how would we address that?
Yeah, so very much like a zoning bylaw, you can have regulations that are very specific to an area as exists today. So although the process would be from a planning framework and the process of a community planning permit system, that would be uniform. It's important to do that, similar to how today someone in Cookstown or someone in Lefroy applies for a zoning bylaw amendment, they're subject to the same process. That's what we want to kind of make a little bit more clear and transparent for the public. But the zoning of someone's property, particularly if there are flooding concerns, that's still going to be put into the bylaw and included, and it's going to be considered as part of the application. So it is still going to be very geographic specific, and we will have an opportunity to review the existing zoning and whether that is carried straight into the community planning permit bylaw, or if it should be updated or bolstered in any way based on any feedback that we receive. So it will be very much based on the individual characteristics of the communities.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Riley? Following up on the Deputy Mayor's first comment about public participation, the province through 108, 109, 23, 97, pick a number, has limited public participation through their acts. So does the CPPS allow us to go further than what the province is suggesting?
Yeah, so all of this legislation, nothing really changed as it pertains to community planning permit systems, which is kind of nice because the province sees, they haven't said this, but this is what I think, they see this as already a streamlined process. It's very flexible in the way that it can be implemented, but the bottom line is approvals are issued within 45 days. One of the things that's really great about community planning permit system is the idea of conditional approvals. So if there's something that's not addressed immediately, you can still meet that 45-day by issuing a conditional approval that is contingent on certain things being implemented or certain community benefits being provided. It's very, very flexible in that way, and something that doesn't really exist in the traditional system right now.
Thank you. I commend you going out to other municipalities that have already adopted this. I think I saw Gananoque, Lake of Bays, and Huntsville.
Yes.
So how many, you said about half of ours in the R Shore we're getting through in 45 days. How are they doing? Are they getting more than that amount?
In Huntsville, they're just getting going. So I've asked them about the statistic, and they don't really have that quite number yet. Lake of Bays seems to be pretty organized, and I believe they're around the same. It's about half getting through around in 45 days. It doesn't mean that the other half are getting appealed. Realistically, an applicant who is likely moving towards addressing issues and working towards an approval, they're not going to appeal their application. It's just that process of moving forward is what they want. And Innisfil, and I should say I commend Innisfil for going forward with this because it's very new. Innisfil has kind of a reputation of being at the forefront of many initiatives, I would say, particularly in planning and development from my perspective anyway. And having already implemented a community planning permit system that other municipalities are also looking at, and now I find it's great that Innisfil is now looking back to other municipalities and everyone is getting that feedback. Really, it's all about learning from each other. And we've, even staff have had discussions with Huntsville staff thinking ahead on implementation. Once we have this bylaw, what does that look like? You know, and what does an application form look like? And what are the fee structure, you know? And it's all a very important stuff. And so town staff is being very proactive behind the scenes, and our consulting team keeps wanting to learn more as well.
Thank you. One of the things I do hear regularly from, I call them small D developers, you know, the property or the contractors building one home or or people, even sometimes larger developers, but is streamlining is extremely important, and that one of the things I hear quite often is, you tell me I need to do this, this, and this, and then I deliver those, and then you come back and tell me, now you need to do this, this, and this. Particularly some of the commercial or industrial area, the businesses out at the 400, I've had that feedback before. Will this process limit that type of back and forth?
Yes, I believe it will. First of all, the pre-consultation will establish what's needed. If there's something that comes out during the 45-day review that's important, that can still be addressed, and the application can be approved on condition that something be studied further. And many times you can still proceed in the building permit process up to a certain stage until such a, depending on the situation, it's very site specific. But I believe that it will address that issue.
Thank you. My final comment would be, it talks in the report about further public engagement on the process. And the last public engagement we had was a virtual meeting. Yes. And I think there's not as much dynamics in the room when you're on Zoom and only one person can talk, and there's no kind of one-on-one like you do in a regular PIC. So it's just my thought going forward, if there's more public consultation to be done, if a more old-fashioned in-person PIC might be considered.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor, and staff and the consulting team have had those discussions, and we'll definitely interested in doing that. So yes, definitely can do that. It's all of the public engagement events we had when we developed our place here. It was amazing, and I still use those as examples of positive community engagement and the kind of creative things that Innisfil did in that process. So we were at a supermarket on a Friday night in March and had more feedback there at the Foodland in Cookstown than I've had at any public consultation event I've ever been at. So you're right.
That's wonderful to hear. I love the fact that we're an engaged community. Thank you so much for that. Any final questions or comments? Then we're going to be coming to this when it's item C1 tonight, so council will make a decision at that point. Thank you very much, Mr. Riley. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the delegation? Councillor Waters and Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? That is carried. Now, thank you for your patience, Mrs. Brand. I'm so sorry for the wait. I'm happy to have you come forward and do your delegation. If you prefer to sit, we can put the mic down. Or are you okay standing? Okay.
Just fine standing, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. In your last staff report, 09123, under background. Thank you. Ooh, got loud. Under background, it says, Ms. Brand advised that she needs assistance to repair the retaining wall. This is not correct. As in the next sentence, it says she notes she believes the wall is the responsibility of the town, and this is correct. And that's based on the survey, the encroachment agreement, and the annual tax levy on the corner of my house. It is town land, and the town has said that, and as such, it's not my wall to repair. The other thing to note is that the canal is not at the back of my property, as it says, but it runs along the entire eastern side of it, parallel to Goodfellow Avenue. I'd like to remind Council that I am still under my doctor's care to help manage the stress that this deteriorating wall has been causing me. It's not a healthy thing to be constantly worried that your only home is being threatened by this problem, even though it is the town's problem and the town's property. The law says you're not allowed to damage your neighbour's property, and the town is my neighbour in this case. Mr. Hughes, who wrote the engineering report, says the wall is required to retain soil on the property at 2395 Crystal Beach Road. Also, that further deterioration of the retaining wall is likely to cause damage to the building's foundations. He recommends that the concrete wall be repaired or replaced to mitigate any damage to the structure at 2395 Crystal Beach Road. So I'm asking Council, please, to schedule it into the town's repairs before my home's foundations are compromised. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just wouldn't mind just waiting to see if anyone has any questions or comments at this time. Seeing none, I want to thank you for that and let you know that that item is what item are we? D1. We'll be dealing with item D1 when it comes up, and that's when council will debate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the delegation. Councillor Drodge, Councillor Waters, all those in favor? That is carried. Next, we'll move on to item 7. Item 7 is the opportunity for members of council who have been appointed by council to different boards or associations to give us an update on any of that work that they've done. Councillor Drodge.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just recently attended the LSRCA Gala, and I'm happy to tell everybody that Mr. Paul Sadlin donated $850,000 to the Scanlon Creek project, and I thought I would take the moment just to let everybody know that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Drodge. It was a lovely evening. Anyone else? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I recently attended a Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority monthly board meeting. At that meeting, we heard a presentation on the Conservation Authority's program rates and fee review. Some of that was with regards to the provincial changes, restricting costs, fees to be increased. So the Conservation Authority was working on ways to deal with that. We also had a presentation on the Conservation Authority's forestry program. Interestingly, the Nottawasaga Valley is the largest conservation authority that still plants trees in its region. And this year they said they had a smaller planting, but they still managed to plant 78,000 trees on 19 different properties in 7 municipalities. So that was an interesting presentation. And that was the gist of the meeting that I attended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. Well, we've been busy at county. We had our week of welcome that was hosted by the Idea Lab and Lakeshore branch. It was actually really well received. There was a lot of people that came out to learn about what we can offer them in the community, as well as we heard from business owners who moved to Canada and took the time to invest in Innisfil and express their love for the community and the response they've gotten. We had a meeting with the Economic Development Committee, and there is something I've been promoting as of late that the county's putting out. It's called experience.simcoe.ca, and it highlights the entire county, where you can eat, where there's beaches, where you, like it's events, everything. It's incredible. It's really easy to navigate. It's really smooth. It's very beautiful, very well put together. So I'm a big supporter of it. And I think that if we get more of our local businesses to reach out to the county and log onto this site, it'll only benefit us all as we support our small local businesses. During the county meeting yesterday, we had the trails. One of the items came up was the Trails Connecting Community Program. And we made an application for $30,000 towards the 25th Side Road redevelopment because it falls under the purview with the bike lanes and the walking path and everything else. So that's something that I'm glad that the county is at least assisting with when it comes forth. When it came to town, we had our Traffic Safety Advisory Committee where we had a delegation from Ms. Varga about the intersection of 20th and Big Bay Point Road. And we're moving forward with investigating the options that we can do to address this issue. So it's not falling on deaf ears. We are actually listening and moving forward. Last night we had a Heritage Committee meeting. A few of our members attended the Heritage Conference in London. And that was actually, they brought back a lot of information of how we can move forward. And I thought it was really incredible. One thing stuck out with me was what they call a Here program. So it's HER, HERE. So around London, you can go to these locations and you can dial a number and it gives you a 2-minute blurb on a piece of history in the community. And I thought about how incredible that would be for us. So if we have a heritage property, you walk up, you get a QR code, boom, on your phone, and then you get a 2-minute bit of history about what the house is, or what, for example, look at the Cookstown Theatre. It has played so many roles in the community. Imagine hearing about all of that just by beeping something on your phone and learning something you never knew. You could bring in tourism. We can develop more of Innisfil's history and promote it to the world, which is really incredible, and it's cost effective. It's, from what we've seen so far, it shouldn't be that difficult to implement. And that's me. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We have as well, we had the forest exemption bylaw from the county come up regarding a property along Innisfil Beach Road. It's across from one of the farms a little further east of here, where we're turning 4.8 acres into agricultural land. So we're removing some trees from the property, but we're not doing it for the purposes of building homes. We're looking at increasing the agricultural ability of the community, which I think is feasible and is actually something that's very noble and proper if we can do it right.
Anyone else? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We had our library board meeting last week. We actually had a really great presentation about protecting intellectual freedom at the library and the policies and processes around that. And they were showing us the steps to remove a book or a movie that you felt didn't belong. And they were saying that it's been years since they've even had to remove a book or a thing. So I thought that was, or a movie, or I thought that was pretty interesting.
Councillor Waters.
Just a statement along with Councillor Drodge's mention of the Conservation Authority's foundation, that I am now the proud owner of The Canoe by Tom Thompson. I bid on it and I won, so I'm going to be very happy to put that up at the cottage. So I just thought that I didn't mention it to anyone because I really didn't know until I got the notice. So I am now the proud owner of The Canoe. Here we go.
Thank you for your donation towards the Scanlon Creek Centre. Anyone else? Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. The Accessibility Committee met last week in Cookstown, and there's 68 kids at the school, so it was the biggest one there. And it was really well, we got really good feedback from them. We're taking a break from the summer, and I'm sure Ms. Kramer needs a break from this as well as all of us. As well, we met at the library board for the fundraiser committee, and we are going forward with a bunch of fundraisings, and we're putting a committee together to get more volunteers to help us raise funds for the library as well. So if anybody wants to help out, let us know.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? I've just got a few things to add. At County Council, we're also going through strategic planning session. We have several, well, actually the majority of County Council is brand new. So we want to make sure that the direction that the county is going is in alignment with the members of County Council. We had a presentation from Dr. Gardner. Dr. Gardner's our Medical Officer of Health for the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit. Again, introducing himself to the new members and letting him know the important work that the health unit is now able to kind of get back to work that it hasn't been able to do throughout the global pandemic. We've actually had 2 county council meetings since we were last here. So at the meeting before that, we had Mr. Kevin Weaver, the president of Georgian College, come and talk to us about a new advanced skills center that they want to build at the college. We heard about a big museum expansion thanks to a bequest from a local resident. And we learned about a bursary. Well, I guess we didn't learn, we've been doing it for years, but just a reminder, there is a bursary program for students that are finishing high school and going on to post-secondary school in Innisfil. And the application dates to apply, and I believe that 23rd of July. I attended, along with CAO Gershow, a NPower board meeting. We're moving along with the cost of service, although I will remind you again that it's not meant to make any changes to the residential hydro rates here in Innisfil. I attended an AMO meeting. I'm on the board of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which represents almost all of the 444 municipalities in Ontario. We had a presentation from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC. They're very anxious and want AMO to advocate for the province to move forward with a reassessment. We haven't had one since 2016, and to help with education on making sure that people don't think that because their assessment doubled, that means then in turn their property taxes are going to double, and make sure they understand how the MPAC affects property taxes. Of course, we're always dealing with things like housing affordability, homelessness, and encampments. We're learning a bit about the new Blue Box program that's coming into effect, and the fact that there's going to be more responsibilities put on producers to take their products to end of life, so that municipal taxpayers aren't paying for that. And we talked about Bill 5. Bill 5 was you'll all remember, we passed here. It did fail. It died on the order paper because it was a private member's bill. That was the one that one lady, I can't remember her name, spoke so passionately about. But now AMO is advocating for a government bill, and we'll be bringing forward a motion here for us to pass for that code of conduct, to make sure that municipal representatives are held up to the same code of conduct that anybody would in any other place of business. And then I went to a police services board meeting and learned, although we got the opportunity to congratulate our new inspector, who was just promoted, Inspector Fernandez. And we also have a new Police Services Act recommendations coming forward. And so there'll be some changes, and we'll have a lot of educational opportunities coming forward to make sure we're fulfilling our role properly as the Police Services Board. And that was a mouthful, but anyone else? It's because we haven't met in 3 weeks, and so there seems to be more. All right, so now we go on to item 8, which is our consent list. So for those of you who aren't familiar with our meetings, all of the items that we are to deal with, they all have a staff report and they have a staff recommendation. If they are not pulled for discussion or for amendments, that means at the end of the meeting, we'll be confirming that direction. And if they are pulled, then council will have the opportunity to give staff any other direction they wish to give them. So if the item you're interested in is here, then if we don't pull it, then that means that the staff recommendation will undoubtedly get confirmed at the end of the meeting. So we'll start with A1, which is the special council meeting minutes dated June 7th. A2, the council meeting minutes dated June 7th. B1, the summary of the June 6 Ward Boundary Review Ad Hoc Committee meeting. B2, the summary of the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to pull it. I just have a couple comments when we're ready.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank Megan for doing her work and just let you know, I had a meeting with the town and we are moving forward with the traffic safety on the 20th Side Road, Big Bay Point. It'll be done between July and August of this year for a 7-day period, which will give us a more comprehensive review this year as it did for 2020. So it'll show us how much more work that has to be done. So it'll give us a better review of what's going on.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. B3, the summary report from the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. C1, the Community Planning Permit Study, Phase 1. what we just had the delegation about. Any? No? All right. C2, the development application approval process. Councillor Waters. C3, the additional funding for the 7th line acoustical fence replacement. Who needs a summer break? Not me. C4, the draft plan of subdivision for 881 Hoffland Street. Councillor Drodge.
I'd like to pull it, please.
C5, the Cookstown sewer allocation. Councillor Drodge.
I'd like to pull it, please.
Thank you. C6, repealing the COVID-19 vaccination policy. C7, I'm sorry, Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I don't need to pull it, but I think it is worth highlighting that, we've gone through the pandemic like everyone else, and staff in the town has dealt with it, I think, very, very well. And this seems like another little step of getting back to the new normal, if you can do that.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Couldn't agree more. C7, the staff tax sale extension agreement for 1508 Shore Acres Drive. C8, development charges background study project update, differential non-residential rate. Go ahead, Councillor Ices.
I didn't want to pull this one either. I just wanted to thank staff for looking into the changes on the that are put forth in the study, giving our industrial users a bit of a lower rate on development charges, and hopefully that'll spur on some more employment in the town.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. I did just want to point out that I believe it was this week or last week that the City of Barrie actually redid all their DC charges, and they increased. And I haven't had the opportunity to kind of take theirs and ours and put them side by side and compare them yet. But I also think that doing the square footage change here makes a difference for because typically non-industrial is a smaller footprint than industrial, so I think it makes it more fair. Those are my comments. C9, which was added, the giant rocking horse update. Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment on this one as well. Staff went to review the rocking horse's condition, and I know in the town it is a bit of a neat spot that we have there, but unfortunately it looks like the horse's days are numbered. So the cost to repair it back to give it a longer life is just simply too much. So I guess I would tell residents to enjoy it while you can, and it's unfortunate that there's not much else we can do. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Item D1, engineer review for retaining wall at 2395 Crystal Beach Road. Councillor Waters? E1, that's the highway naming bylaw dedicating from Pepperton Way and Greg Gamma Way. There's no correspondence for action. G1 is the proclamation of National Drowning Prevention Week. G2, the Fiat Simcoe Pride Week. G3, the Ministry Housing Pledges and Targets. Councillor Ices?
I'd like to refer that to committee.
Thank you, Councillor. G4, the Innisfil Library Board meeting minutes, which were added late, so if you don't have them in your package, they're in your email. And that's everything. So now we'll go with the consent list recommendation. And these are the items that were pulled for discussion. See if it matches my list. Great. And I think that was G3, not D3. That's the only change there. Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Waters, Councillor Drodge. All those in favor? That is carried. Now, a motion to resolve into committee of the whole. I'm going to get this out tonight. Councillor Constantine and Deputy Mayor Fowler, all those in favor? That is carried. So now we'll move on to items that were pulled. And so the first one is C2. And that was pulled by Councillor Waters.
Sure.
Yeah. Councillor Richardson's going to second it. I don't have any motions to change it. I just want to make a few comments about the development application review process. So a few good things I see written in there, and one has to do with the pre-consultative process. A lot of times you'll hear developers point the finger at staff for holding up and delaying projects, permits, and we've become the target of the province, and hence why we've had as many changes as we have. However, in reality, it's mostly because developers don't come to the table with all the information, and we have to send it back, and we have to review and review and review. So it's glad to see this pre-consultative process, which they come to the table ahead of time. We tell them what they need to have. They come the first time with all the documentation. So I think it's a really good thing that we include, because in some conservation authorities have been doing that previously, and it's really hastened the opportunity for getting permits. So I think it's a really good process. I think for also public consultation, even though that public consultation is being eliminated, that we still are allowed to have it in our in the community planning process. So I think moving in that direction is really a good idea. So I'm really pleased to see that. The last item is the one to do with conservation authorities, and that the conservation authorities are now not allowed to comment on anything that's environmental. They can maintain their flooding and natural hazards, those types of things, but anything to do with environment, water quality, not natural hazards, but heritage property, natural heritage, is no longer for them to comment on. That has now been transferred to the responsibility of the town. So where it used to be done by one body for the entire of Lake Simcoe, which was consistent and efficient, now every single municipality has to hire the appropriate staff to make comments on environmental issues around Lake Simcoe. So we have 20 different municipalities around Lake Simcoe. Everyone now has to hire somebody, and hopefully that they're consistent from municipality to municipality. It adds to our budget, so either we're hiring consultants now, or we're having to hire somebody internally to do this. So, and there's going to be lead time. We have to get up to speed in terms of what we need to do. It was, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion is it was a bad mistake, because it's now less efficient, because now many municipalities are doing it. It's less consistent, and when you have environmental regulations, you want to be consistent across the board. You don't want one municipality on one side of the lake doing something different or allowing something different than on our side of the lake. So it's really a bad thing to happen, but this is what the town needs to do. So the town's being proactive right now in terms of putting this forward to council so that we can get ahead of the game, so we're ready. Hopefully, you know, this won't make it, but just to let you know is that this is what's happened to your conservation authorities, which have been around, you know, since the 50s. They've been doing a great job. They've been the target of many governments, but now this is what's happened. So I just wanted to let you know that conservation authorities have performed a marvelous role. The fact that I worked for one for 30 years kind of sets me as a little biased, but I believe they do what they're supposed to do, and it's a shame that the government is taking this tact to do this. So I just wanted to inform residents that this is a change, this is what's part of this, and that you should know that that your conservation authorities are still there, but they're doing mostly flood management and not natural environmental issues anymore. It's going to fall in the responsibility of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Did Director Lee or Manager Correa have anything you wanted to add to that? Can I just ask one clarification question? So the recommendation says procurement process to obtain qualified review. Does that mean hiring a body, or does that mean going out and getting consultants when required?
So, Mayor Dolan, the way that's been identified at this point, it is hiring consultants and going through that peer review process through a consulting team. Primarily, initially, because there will be different disciplines, so different types of natural heritage studies, hydrogeological. We may need different types of ecologists, biologists for different types of reports. And then we'll have the opportunity to further assess the skill set in the future and whether there's a need for that in-house staff and what the qualifications would be. But the staff report is speaking to consultants initially.
Thank you. Councillor Waters?
A question. Can we hire the Conservation Authority?
Director Lee?
Mayor Dolan, through you to Councillor Waters, based on the understanding of the legislation, it may be more of a legal question than a director question. We are still looking at that, and it is our understanding under the legislation that it is specific as to the role they can play and not play. There are Category 1 services, which is part of the Conservation Authorities Act, so we are still investigating whether they can or cannot be, to look at that further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the recommendation as is written on the screen? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next is Councillor Drodge on item C4.
All right, through your worship, I just had some questions. So I'm new to this project. I've been looking it over for the past week or so. I like the idea that we have single dwelling units backing on to existing single dwelling units, but I noticed on the north end, block 16, block 17, and block 18 are townhomes, 3 stories, backing onto existing single dwelling units. Do we have any precautions or measures to block that? And secondly, how far back are those townhouses from the rear lot line?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Drodge. The first question, the houses to the north of the subdivision are actually part of the downtown commercial designation, so those lots are actually allowed to have mixed-use buildings on them up to 4 stories. The townhouses would be set back a minimum 7.5 meters from the north lot line or the rear lot line of those townhouses.
Okay, and my other question is you're substantially trying to increase the amount of townhouses units that are allowed currently, and we're on the table right now to amend that. 56 versus 9 single dwelling units. I'm not sure if I think that's a realistic venture. Like, I don't understand why we couldn't maybe back some of those blocks off and get a little more single detached units on this project. And my third question would be, if we did go through with this, are all those townhouses DC exempt?
Through your worship, I'm not sure if I can answer the third question about DCs, but I will say that in terms of the townhouses, I'll give you an example. 1303 and 1357 Bellar Beach Road, which were approved by council last year on Bellar Beach Road, allowed, I don't have the exact numbers here, but I think it was the proportion of townhouses to singles was actually more than this. I think there were a total of, well, it was over 200 actually in that area, but it was in a large area, and a lot of them were condominiums, so they were on private roads. The exemption, the Lefroy secondary plan was originally approved by the Ontario Municipal Board, I believe, in 2007, which for the greenfield areas of Lefroy allowed 25% townhouses overall. There still may be only 25% townhouses overall. This is just saying that if that 25% is exceeded by, for example, the Bel Air Beach Road projects that I mentioned in this project, they could go ahead as proposed with some additional townhouse units, a little bit of additional density adjacent to the downtown commercial, while buffering the Church Drive properties with 21-meter, 70-foot wide lots.
That's a lot. Okay. I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Is there someone who could respond to the affordability DC eligible question? Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. In terms of the affordable, attainable housing, at this point, the province hasn't provided the definitions of what will fall under that category, so we're not in a position to say whether they would be DC exempt at this point in time.
Okay, thanks. So at this particular moment, we're assuming that all those townhouses would not be DC exempt.
Until we have a definition that says they are or are not, that's the assumption that we're going from, is that they are not exempt until we have a clear definition from the province.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drudge. There was also a question in regards to the parkland dedication. And is the parkland dedication and this plan of subdivision being shared?
To you, Your Worship, the parkland is being shared through the Lefroy secondary plan process and the subdivisions approved about 15 years ago by the board. There is a policy that requires a cost-sharing agreement, so there's a cost-sharing of parkland amongst the developers.
And I just have one more question, actually, she reminded me. And just to be clear, you're also sharing the stormwater management, correct, with Laura Mill Homes? You're piggybacking off of it?
Again, through your, that is correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on this plan of subdivision? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That's carried. Next is item, staff report DSR 095-23, the Cookstown sewer allocation. Councillor Drudge.
So I think ex-Councillor Nickel said it best. The applicant has had allocations to this project before and has turned them down. He currently has modular homes in place, which he does not have permits for. He never went through the proper channels. So I ultimately think that we should keep these 5 units as a community benefit. And I do know that there is a current restaurant that is trying to get permits and doing the proper channels. So I believe we should leave it as it is and let them stay as community benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on this? I had a couple. So the history on this property prior to this owner owning it, they were given allocation and they came to town requesting to be exempt from DCs, that they'd somehow already paid the DCs in the past. You know, and as Mr. Nichols said, you know, we have had some issues as far as the standard to which the property has been kept. I also am worried about using up the allocation and stagnating the downtown, which is what those were originally meant to be, was to create a vibrant downtown. And if you've been there lately, it's not as vibrant as it used to be, I'm sorry to say. So I think they could be better used in bringing that to the forefront. But also, the units that you talk about, the 2 on King Street South, that is questionable whether they're going forward or not. The one of them has a heritage property attached to it, Hendel Manor, and I worry about how long it can just sit there without having any, without moving forward with that project. Do we have any leverage to, if they aren't moving forward with that project, to at least make that heritage property livable? Who wants that one? Mr. Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I think we'd have to look into that further and probably talk to the Heritage Committee as well in terms of having the understanding of the importance of the designation that's there and talking to building as well about what we can move forward with in terms of our leverage. So, you know, certainly I made some notes about that we would look at that further. At this point, they do have their allocation until that September timeline, so we're going on the assumption that they would still be moving forward with development until that timeline passes.
Thank you. And yeah, that's very helpful. And I think that anything we can do to infill the downtown core at this point and make it more vibrant, it would be, in my case, my priority. So I would ask the mover and the seconder if they have an amendment to the recommendation. Councillor Drudge?
So yeah, the amendment would be that council keeps the same 5 units under the community benefit and wait till September, because I believe in September there's another 30 units that are being addressed, that at that time maybe he can come back to council and apply for those 5. So currently right now, keep the 5 units as a community benefit.
Director Lee?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Dolan. I'm wondering, given the timing, whether we look to defer the report until and I'd have to look at the date of the council meeting in September that would be post that, and then it could be considered at that point in time.
My only worry about that is if that restaurant wanted to go ahead, does that then stall them as well?
No, because the allocation hasn't been given to anyone else, so those community benefit units are still available.
Okay.
There is only, I think, one council meeting before there'd be the August meeting, and I'm not sure that they're necessarily going to be ready to come to the August meeting. We're working through a process, so if they are, we'll bring that in August, but I think timing may work.
Oh, all right, thank you so much. Yeah, with the mover and the seconders, does deferral work for you?
So I'm okay with deferring it as long as we are deferring it till September and there's no complications for the application for the restaurant.
Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just confirming, we haven't received the application yet for the commercial, so timing-wise, I think that will work fine. If we got the application, 1st of July, we still wouldn't be in a position to bring it forward until that timing.
Is that, are you in agreement with that, Councillor Drudge?
Through your worship, yeah, I'm okay with that. So I'd like to defer it.
So there's a motion to defer, moved by Councillor Drudge, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fowler. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next is item D1. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Richardson is going to second the motion. Anyways, I just want to mention a few things. Is that right now we've been just to receive the engineer's report, and I just want to throw my support behind Ms. Brand. She's endured a lot over the past few months, and she's right that the property does belong to the town. But in this process, we also found that part of the property does belong to Goodfellow. So that is something that was new in the process of learning this. I think that she should be treated like everyone upstream equally in terms of we're going to provide some relief for those residents upstream, that we should be providing relief to Ms. Brand and the issue that she has with the retaining wall. I also think that the report from the engineer is a bit vague and very light, and doesn't, for me, substantially convince me that it's Ms. Brand's responsibility. So I think there's enough there that I would like to see whether or not we can sit down and with Ms. Brand and discuss some sort of resolve around this.
Motion to amend. Do you have a motion to amend?
I was hoping that that we might have something that, but something that can direct staff to. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Be directed. I think that.
Is your seconder okay with that, Councillor Waters?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments on the amended recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Next, we'll go to item G3, and that would be Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I have Councillor Constantine is seconding bringing this to the floor. I wonder if we could just have a few moments. I wanted to just hear from staff how a letter like this will be dealt with. I notice that in a lot of other municipalities have moved forward with a pledge to create more housing with numbers for the 2031 timeframe. A lot has changed between the province and municipalities as to what kind of targets we have for our municipality in the MTR process that we went through quite extensively the last year or so. Those targets were more or less dictated by the county or the province, but now I think we have a little bit more leeway on what numbers we put forward. So I'm wondering if staff can maybe comment on how this correspondence would be dealt with.
Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through to Councillor Ices. So staff are currently working through a timeline and a process to address a housing strategy for the town, given the growth allocations that were identified through the county's MCR process, understanding that that document is still at the province, hasn't been adopted, and at the time it was put in place, obviously the provincial framework was different, but we would still need to move forward in terms of a strategy on the type of housing, the locations, and that direction to be incorporated into our official plan going forward. So I think the housing pledge and the timing that's identified here in terms of developing the pledge, coming up with the locally appropriate housing targets, our intent is through the planning team to address that this fall and bring that forward to council for consideration in line with the December target date for the province.
Councillor Ices, a follow-up?
No, thank you. I just was curious as to the process around that memo.
Thank you. I'm just going to add my 2 cents worth. So these have been going around the province. Up until now, municipalities, typically 100,000 or over, were getting them. But I guess now the next tier of municipalities is getting them. To our knowledge, only 3 of Simcoe County municipalities got them, ourselves, Bradford, and New Tecumseh. I'm not sure I heard you right, Councillor Ices, but I'm sure what will be the targets that will be accepted by the province in this will be no less than what the MCR targets were, in fact, maybe more. And the only municipality that has dared not to sign the pledge so far was Mayor Taylor in Newmarket. And we're waiting to see what consequences might come from that. So I see this as a marching orders from the province, from my perspective. So I just wanted to make you, and I could be wrong, but that's the way I'm seeing it. And I was actually going to ask for this to be pulled if nobody did, because I thought just receiving it as correspondence for information might send the province the wrong message that we're just going to like ignore it. And I thought maybe if the mover and the seconder would entertain a friendly amendment to add that be forward to staff for review and comment. Councillor Constantine? Yeah. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And next is a rise recommendation. So I need a rise recommendation moved by Deputy Fowler, seconded by Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? That is carried. And then we move to adoption of the recommendations from Committee of the Whole, moved by Councillor Waters, seconded by Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That is carried. And next we move to Councillor Icey's motion, to which notice has already been given. Councillor Icey, do you have a seconder?
Councillor Saunders.
Did you want to speak to your motion, Councillor?
Yes, I will. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Ceci for being here tonight. It was a few months ago that he invited me for a meeting to discuss his dilemma. As he said, you know, the National Pines Golf Course has been in Innisfil for many, many years, since the 90s. And he was dealing with the proposed upgrades of Huroney Road. Now, we know that that's a major road and it does need upgrading, but in reviewing some of the plans moving forward, it just seemed like the route that has been taken is very intrusive to Mr. Ceci's property, and the fact that it's in Innisfil and this is a Barrie project also led me to bring this motion forward. Anybody who drives down that road looking towards the west side where Barrie has the land, it's pretty obvious that would be incredibly unintrusive to move more of the road to that side. So I do understand there has been public meetings in the past, but our attempt was to maybe have a bit more of a communication directly between Innisfil and Barrie, as is explained in the motion. So that's my reasoning for bringing this forward, and hopefully we can help in National Pines' issue and Innisfil's issue with this road. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Icey. Other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to support Councillor Icey on this one. Even in the comments tonight, the first responses we're getting are expropriation. And it appears, and the way it's coming across is on top of intrusive, it comes across as arrogant. Like, you know, we need it, so we're going to take it sort of mentality. And we can't set that tone. This is a man's business. We try to minimize the damage. We try to move forward in a respectable manner, but the comments being made behind the scenes as well as the basic fact that they just want to simply take the land. It shows no respect for anything we have. So if we're going to go to the table, we go with respect and we treat each other in that manner, as opposed to getting the sense of, well, we need it, we're just going to take it. That doesn't appeal to me. So I fully support Councillor Acey's on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
I have two questions. One, are they legally allowed to expropriate land which is in Innisfil? Question one.
Mr. Parkin?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Waters. So when this was brought to our attention a couple of weeks ago, we dove into some old agreements that were made around the time of the annexation in 2010. And so there is an annexation agreement between the town of Innisfil, the city of Barrie, and the county of Simcoe. And part of that agreement is a series of boundary road agreements, basically a small agreement that says who's responsible for what border road, because sometimes the border goes right down the middle of the road, and the province didn't tell us who was responsible. So we have several of those agreements. In this section of Tonside Road, it's actually shared by the county and the city of Barrie. So the authority to expropriate on the Innisfil side is actually the county of Simcoe's, and they have an agreement with the city of Barrie that says they'll work together to widen. Eventually, it was contemplated back then that it would be widened and they would work together to that. So the authority to expropriate there is with the county, and Barrie's responsible for the road, so Barrie is the one initiating the process, but they do have authority to do that, similar to like the way on Innisfil Beach Road, for example, the county can expropriate for their road in other instances.
Thank you. And my second question has to do with that on the west side of that road, there's another golf course. So is it restricted in terms of where the road can go for, I think it's Innisfil golf course? So is it restricted there and it has to go down the middle, and hence why they have to expropriate on both sides? I know as you get closer to further south, there's more land available. But if you going north on the west side, there is another golf course there. So does that restrict where that road can go at that point?
I'm going to go to Mr. Parkin, but before that, I'm going to say I'm quite certain that the plan for that golf course is to become houses in the future. Mr. Parkin?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to answer that one to the best that I can. I think that through the EA process is where they would determine how far the land they would need on either side of the road. Whether they would, I wouldn't think that they would restrict it just because the golf course was there. If they're looking at doing that on the east side of the road as well, I mean, I can only assume, but I don't know the details of the EA, but that they would have done the same on the west side.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? My one comment, and it's a bit off topic, and I don't want to amend the motion, but just that that we learn from this, and if there's other border roads that, because I remember Lockhart coming up, and I remember being requested by the city of Barrie to again, annex the land only from, or expropriate the land only from the Innisfil side. The last direction I remember giving as a council to staff was no. And, but I don't know if an EA has gone on and we haven't been paying close enough attention. I'm just hoping that we can make sure that we're paying close attention in all instances to protect our residents as much as we possibly can. Seeing no other hands, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Announcements. Members of Council, Council Ward 1, Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. The Ward 1 Neighborhood Night is coming up on July 10th, so I look forward to meeting residents there at Stroud Arena for a good time with other community partners. So I'm looking forward to that. Just recently I was happy to be involved in the Mayor's Golf Tournament last week, and Councillor Waters and I had a good time hitting balls. Some went well, some not so much, but always a fun time at that event. So I'll let the Mayor talk about her tournament, but I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Constantine.
No announcement this week, Your Worship.
Poor Councillor Constantine has been inundated with flooding complaints this week. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So big congratulations to the graduates of St. Francis of Assisi from last night's graduation. Nantyre graduation is tomorrow. Big congrats to them, to all of them, as well as to Mr. Mark Keating, who is the principal who is retiring. And a huge welcome to Mr. Brian McIsaac, who will be joining as the new principal in September, coming from Innisfil. Huge thank you to Ward 3 businesses, Tannock and Auto Ranch, for hosting and sponsoring the Goodfellow After Party graduation event on Monday. Library summer programs sign-up continues. However, there are many programs that have waiting lists, so check it out today. Check it out, and you can still sign up for their summer reading program, which is really great. Music in the Park has started. On Fridays, it'll be held here or in Ward 3 at Town Square from 6:30 to 8. Lot to do around the community on Canada Day. Specifically in Ward 3, the Moon Cafe will be open and having all sorts of fun outdoor games, as well as a vendor market and food truck. July 8th and 9th is the townwide garage sale, one of my favorites. Lots of great deals. Check out their Facebook page for the map of participating addresses. The cost to add your address will be a donation. They'll be using as a donation to Procyon. Good luck to the dancers from Miss Jenny's in Ward 3 and Chelsea's Dance Pack from Ward 1. I believe there's 7 dancers in total that are heading to Portugal to represent Innisfil in the World Dance Competition. Innisfil graduates in its 4th year this year. We were able to help celebrate almost 75 grads. Thank you to everyone that participated, shared, nominated, and or adopted a grad. I personally love seeing the posts of the smiling faces when the kids got their gifts and stuff like that. And then speaking of grads in schools, congratulations to all the graduates this year, as well as the kiddos heading to their last day of school tomorrow before summer break. And a huge good luck to all the parents that now have their kids home for the summer.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to apologize that we had to cancel our neighborhood nights last night, first one. I was really looking forward to chatting with residents and finding what some of their concerns were, and also playing some of the games that the town had organized. Just to let you know, that will be moved to August. So I look forward to that. Also, a comment on our golf game: never allow your teammates to say that you are the putter because you got one good shot, because it sends your game down the hole. Thank you, Kevin. Next, Canada Day at Innisfil Lions Club from 10 to 2. There are free games and hot dogs, and there'll be a flag raising for the 50th anniversary at 1 p.m. Graduations at Alcona Glen are Tuesday. Goodfellow was Monday, and Holy Cross is on Monday as well. So congratulations to all those students who are now off to high school. On July 28th from 8 to 11 p.m., there's a seniors dance at the Lions Hall, put on by My Seniors Hub. Tickets are $15, and I can officially go to that.
Mike and I will be bartending. We'll be there.
And last but not least, open mic night at Lions Hall, Thursday, July 6th from 7 to 11 p.m. Drinks are $5, and it's cash only. There we go.
Thank you. Councillor Zanella.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
couple of weeks ago, I guess since our last meeting, we had the opportunity to go to the Park Ridge Mattamy Homes opening of their sales site, and we toured some of the houses. So they have some bungalow attached homes, and they are all land lease. And I haven't had a chance to go look at the other ones yet, but I think their sales office opened the day we were there, and they were getting a lot of calls, so that's very exciting.
Thank you, Councillor Zanella. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had neighborhood nights last week. It was really well received. We had lots of people out, which was really nice, and the staff did a great job. As well, coming up on Canada Day, we'll be doing the Veterans Breakfast, and then we'll be all heading over to Sandy Cove to go through the Sandy Cove Parade, which I hope everybody's there and it keeps nice and dry. And then the Fitzies will be playing with the barbecue out on the green. So if you want to join us, come there. And as well, I think the mayor and all the staff need a huge thank you for the golf tournament. I'm not going to steal their thunder, but it was a really good tournament. And everybody that was there, all the councillors had a great time. And so I think everybody that needs to say thank you to all the staff for arranging it.
Thank you. Councillor Drudge.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in Cookstown, there's music in the park on Monday nights from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Cookstown Community Park. July 12th is Ward 7's Neighborhood Nights. I hope everybody comes out. That's at the Churchill Community Center. I wanted to say congratulations to all the graduates from Killarney Beach Public School, Cookstown Central, and Innisfil Central. And on July 21st, Fresh Air Flicks is starting up, and it's at the library in Cookstown. And I believe the two movies are Puss in Boots and The Last Wish. And it's from, oh, it's the same movie. It's one movie. I apologize, from 7 to 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, everyone's talking about music in the park because it's going to be all over town. So I'm going to be hitting as many of them as I can. With Canada Day, we have the parade that has been mentioned for Sandy Cove that we're attending, and the Lion Hall is doing a flag raising after at 1 o'clock, but the Legion is kind enough to wait for us to get our affairs in order once we finish up with the Lions Hall to make our way over for their flag raising, which is, that'll be a lot of patriotism that day. On top of that, everyone's pretty much mentioned the neighborhood nights and the Fresh Air Flicks. The first one being on July 7th. I believe it is Strange World. So I always enjoy going out to these, you know, meeting with the people and whatnot. And lastly, last week we had our Indigenous flag raising. So it was, there were many of us in attendance, and it's always good to remember where we came from and where we're headed to. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So lots going on, as you can see. I just wanted to mention a couple of things that haven't been mentioned so far. We really have to thank our MPP, Andrea Kanjan, for her funding for our mobile senior program. We received $13,500, and it will go around Innisfil and help mobilize some of our seniors from all over our community to get involved. There's all kinds of educational things, some activities, socialization, and some exercise all together. Also, this week in Toronto is a big tech conference called Collision. So there is, we took the opportunity to partner with DMZ Toronto to bring the world to Innisfil. We had tech startups from China, from Vietnam, from Egypt, from St. Vincent, from Tokyo. Lots of really great, energetic young minds, and we got to show them a little bit of Innisfil, but also talk to them about our wonderful DMZ here, and that you don't have to be a big city to have a startup. You can have a good quality of life and also start your new business. What else did I want to say? We had a public art launch. So the Innisfil Historical Society has a beautiful frame they put down in Innisfil Beach Park, and you can stand behind it and have your picture taken. So we did a launch, and I was pleased to attend with members of council to that. Also, Onion Fest was quite successful. I know they got a bit wet Friday night, but I think things were very successful. I've had some very good comments on the entertainment there, and also attended the Troy Scott Memorial Golf Tournament at Innisbrook with Troy's dad and brother to raise money for that community fridge program. It's the 3rd annual one, and it's a little bit like a homecoming and a family reunion all wrapped into one. And Councillor Ices and I got to go and have lunch with the Stroud Seniors, a great group of card players that meet at the Stroud Community Centre regularly. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you to all of council for your comments about the golf tournament. It was absolutely a picture-perfect day. The Monday before was miserable, and the Monday after was miserable, and we thread the needle, and we had an absolutely gorgeous day. But it's called the Mayor's Golf Tournament in name only. It's actually should be called the Karen Shea Golf Tournament. She works for months on it, and I know she's not here, but I know she's watching on live stream. So Karen, thank you so much. You just knock it out of the park every year. We raised over $66,000 for the community, Innisfil Community Foundation, to be spread out in our community. And Karen's always telling me she's a non-golfer, but boy, does she know how to run a good tournament. And I'm just so pleased and thank all of there was so many volunteers from the town, so many supporters from our community, and lots of our local businesses. So what a great success. And June 17th, mark your calendars, that's next year's most gorgeous day. I also am looking forward to tomorrow speaking at the Nantarow Shores graduation. You know you've been at this job too long when you're going to graduations of kids that weren't even born when you got on council. But I digress. So with this meeting tonight, I want to wish everybody a very happy Canada Day in any which way that you spend it. We're going to be taking a month off. We don't meet again until August the 9th, and I think we all need it. They say things work better if you unplug them and plug them back in again, and I think that's true of all of us too. And that goes to staff because, you know, we sit up here and read these agendas. Somebody has to prepare them all, write all the reports and do all that work. So not having a council meeting is not only good for council, it's a nice break for staff as well. And staff, council, you deserve it. We've been at this now officially for 7 months, but really for 8 months since we started in the massive orientation sessions. And I have to say, I've so enjoyed working with each and every one of you. You've given 110%, and you deserve a bit of a break. So enjoy it, and we'll see you back on August the 9th. Mr. Gershow, anything for the good of the corporation?
Thank you, Mayor Dillon. Just to say on behalf of staff, thank you, members of council, for your words of appreciation. It means a lot to know that our work is valued and appreciated by all of you.
Thank you so much. And with that, then we will go to the confirming bylaw, and I'd ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. And just before we go to adjournment, I was remiss in not thanking Director Bowman and her crew for jumping in yesterday morning. Was it yesterday? Yes, it was. And dealing with unprecedented flooding in the town of Innisfil. I mean, we have areas that are chronic flooding areas, but we had areas of the town flood yesterday that have never flooded before, at least never flooded that I've seen. So thank you to your staff. I know they worked long and hard into the night and early in the morning, so please pass on our thanks. And also to all the operations, fire that went out and did wellness checks on people as well, and all the town staff that were involved in that operation. Councillor Waters?
I would like to point out that I did drive by one of my old haunts on Park Street where there was always flooding, and I always like to push this project because the staff did such a great job on it. There was no flooding on Park Street. absolutely none. It's all going into Innisfil Beach Park. So I don't have to visit that street anymore, except during voting season. But there are other parts of Ward 4 that we're still working on, and we do have a flood strategy for that. But I just want to mention that we have eliminated one area.
Thank you for that. It's always nice to be moving in the right direction. Okay, with that now, I will ask for a mover and a second to adjourn, please. Councillor Drodge and Councillor Richardson, so that we adjourn at 8:49 p.m. Thank you, everybody who joined us on. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you to everybody who joined us online. Thanks for those who came to see us tonight. And we'll see you on August